there, everybody. Welcome to Fresh Outlook, the show where we're talking about what you're talking about. I'm your host, Taryn Brill, but just call me TWB. On today's show, we'll begin with the headline that is dominating everyone's conversations: rising tensions on the Korean Peninsula. With each day, the launch of a missile test by North Korea seems more and more likely. So how serious is this threat? Our panel weighs in. From there, we'll tackle the social impact of science fiction and fandom. From Star Trek to Doctor Who, the fantasy that comes along with sci-fi appears to be more popular than ever. So why the sci-fi surge? We'll get into that and more. But before we get the conversation started, as always, let's meet our all-star panel, I should say. Let's begin with Mr. Rossi. Tell us where you're from and welcome.
I'm Dr. Rossi, political psychologist. I'm here to take a look at the psychological aspects of the issue.
Looking forward to that. And Dee Dee, tell us who you are, where you're from.
I'm Dee Dee Benkie, and I'm a political cultural commentator, former aide to President Bush, and a blogger.
Terrific. Can't wait to get into the conversation with you guys. But first, the White House said yesterday, it would not be surprised if North Korea launched a missile test soon. So let's take a look.
After weeks of war rhetoric, North Korea is taking firm steps to cut ties to the South. Kim Jong-un has already severed a Red Cross hotline and dishonored a 1953 armistice. Now Pyongyang is barring South Korean managers and trucks from crossing the border into the jointly operated Kaesong Industrial Park. 480 South Koreans were refused entry to work.
North Korea's decision in blocking entry and exit to Kaesong Industrial Zone is causing a negative effect on the South-North relationship, and it will also bring criticism from the international society and further isolation for North Korea. After 2 to 3 days, the factories will face some problems with their operation, and this can damage the supply of the companies as well.
The Kaesong move comes a day after the North said it intends restarting a plutonium reactor. Rallies across Pyongyang support the leader and his ambitions. The South has warned that it is ready for any eventuality.
I am warning North Korea to stop its threats. I want to announce here that we have a full military readiness posture.
The North's rising rhetoric has been met by a display of U.S. military strength. 2 U.S. F-22 stealth fighters flew over South Korea and back to their base in Japan. B-2 jets were also deployed as part of the Foal Eagle joint military exercise with Seoul. North Korea has denounced the joint drills, saying they are rehearsals for war.
All right, panel, I'm dying to hear your thoughts on this. Should we be nonchalant as in the past? It seems some people, it's North Korea making threats as usual, but something tells me from my perspective this is not the typical threat. How serious is this, what that piece talked about? Dee Dee?
I think you're right, Taryn. I mean, because we're dealing with a young member of this family, 3 generations of dictatorships. He's 30 years old. I mean, think about it. He's 30. He's impetuous. I mean, he's threatening war. I think we have to take him seriously because he's got his finger on a nuclear missile. I mean, so I think it's frightening, and it's something that the United States has to take seriously, and we definitely need to keep an eye on it and doing what we need to be doing, you know, flying folks over and letting them know that we have our military strength and we're taking it seriously.
Right. This is a young guy. From my perspective, I think he's just trying to assert his authority and his power to say, hey, look, don't mess with me, and this is the first round of it. So, Dr. Rossi, what do you think?
I think he's trying to assert his power. I don't think it's going to be a big problem, but I agree that we have to take it seriously. As a psychologist, what really troubles me here is this the first time we're going down a road where someone is mentally deranged and has a nuclear weapon? Is this the first trip down that pathway? That really bothers me. I don't think that's the case. I think it's more like really he's being bellicose. He's trying to assert himself so he has power. And by the way, I see it as a personality problem from father to son. Remember his father? The first time he played golf? 12 holes in one? I mean, this is the type of thing that we're dealing with. I mean, this is the type of personality that we're really dealing with there. So it's really hard to comprehend, but it's what we have to take on.
I saw a soundbite on one of the evening news programs the other night interviewing some South Korean residents, and they don't seem fazed by it. This is what we're used to. Let's cross that bridge when we come to it. That was the exact translation. Let's cross the bridge when we get to it. If you were in South Korea, I mean, hypothetically, let's say, do you think that's how you'd be?
I'm worried now, and I'm in New York, or I'm in New Jersey. You know, I mean, I'm worried about it now, and I think, you know, it's certainly bigger than a bridge. I mean, they're right across the border, and that's something that they should be concerned about because, you know, even though there's been this rhetoric before, the father was more seasoned, you know, he realized that if there was a strike, people are going to strike back, they probably would get annihilated, and then look what can happen.
Right.
So it's a very dangerous situation with him being so young and with him having the attitude of, look, I'm a dictator, I'm from a dictatorial family, not to mention the fact that this country, it's very militaristic. It's not like other countries in the Middle East. I mean, these folks, the army is first, the military is first. You know, and they're used to making that number one, even with people starving. They've got 2/3 of their people starving, and many in the military even do not get enough to eat, so it's a bad situation.
Okay, with that, I want to introduce David J. Karl. He should be joining us via Skype. He's the president of the Asia Strategy Initiative. David, welcome.
Hello.
Hello. So give us your sort of expertise perspective on this. We've been talking about how big of a threat this is. I'm curious your take on it, and I also want your take on China. Where does China stand in all this, and what do you think their next move is going to be?
Yeah, first off, the level of rhetoric that's coming out of Pyongyang is just over the top and unprecedented. So from that perspective, it's very worrying. On the other hand, there's been no concrete action taken so far in the last 2 or 3 weeks. So it leads me to think that so far all this bluster will remain bluster. My own opinion is that the North Korean regime is working its way up to April 15th, which is the 100th anniversary of the founder of the North Korean state, Kim Il-sung. I think it's likely that one of the missiles one or maybe 2 of the missiles, medium-range missile systems that is being deployed to the east coast of North Korea might actually be launched. This will be a test launch, again, to allow Kim Jong-un to say to the world, I have stood up to America, and also to allow him to consolidate his power vis-a-vis the North Korean military.
What do you think about China's perspective in all of this? Because China and North Korea, can you hear us okay, by the way? We're getting some feedback in the studio. David, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm there. Regarding China, there is indication that the Chinese attitudes towards North Korea is changing. That many in the Chinese leadership seem to be fed up with dealing with an erratic, unpredictable problem right on its back doorstep. China has other things to do rather than deal with this this problem.
Do you think China's really going to turn their back on North Korea? Because you talk about the trade agreements. Basically, China accounts for 90% of the energy imports into North Korea. So there's a lot at stake here.
There is. We will find out more in the next month. Over the next month, 3 high-level U.S. officials will travel to Beijing, starting next weekend with Secretary of State Kerry will be in Beijing, followed by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dempsey, and then in early May, Tom Donilon, the U.S. National Security Advisor, will be there as well. So it will be a good opportunity to find out, to gauge exactly where China is on this and whether it will rigorously enforce the UN sanctions that were passed last month. In the past, China has agreed to adopt sanctions and then turned a blind eye, for the most part, to enforcing these sanctions. So
right.
We'll find out.
Right. We should say bilateral trade between China and North Korea reached nearly $6 billion in 2011. So like I said, there's a lot at stake. Let's look ahead. If this missile is launched, a lot of just sort of regular people are wondering here in the U.S., am I at risk? I mean, that seems like a pretty basic question, but are we at risk, and to what extent do you think, David?
the missile simply doesn't have the distance to travel to the mainland of the United States, and not even to Hawaii, although U.S. forces and U.S. residents in Guam may be under threat. So the distance is there, seems to be there, provided, however, that the missile actually launches successfully, and North Korea has a problem with launching missiles successfully. They occasionally blow up on the launch pad. I would say this, that there is no evidence so far that North Korea has been able to weaponize its nuclear explosive device. That is, to make it compact enough so that it can fit inside the warhead compartment of a missile system. There's no evidence that that North Korea has been able to do that so far.
I want to have the panel weigh in. You know what we've been discussing here about the threat to the U.S. Specifically, I wanted to touch upon the threat to U.S. industry here. There's some stuff. General Motors, the chief executive of General Motors, came out saying he's concerned about his plants in South Korea, and he's considering evacuation and possibly moving them entirely out of there in the future. So this does seem like a serious threat. How do you guys think it's going to affect U.S. industry?
You know, I don't think it's going to affect U.S. industry, really. No,
Okay.
I think what's going to happen is people like this back down. People with over-the-top personalities like this will back down. And I think the strategy. I think so far the strategy is right. I think that we have a lot of force there, and I think we're pushing the envelope. We're pushing him, and at the same time, we're trying to have a dialogue. We're trying to talk to China, and we're trying to put as much pressure on this guy as possible. But that doesn't solve the problem, because an erratic person can do anything. So there's some anxiety, but I do think people like this will back down.
I mean, we're dealing with a madman.
Yeah,
There's no
agree.
doubt.
You know, I think that we do need to worry about this guy. He's young. I mean, in his whole life, he's dealt with the dictatorial family, and he's been able to do anything he wants to. So, and you know that this family has no regard for human life because they kill their own people. So, you know, to launch a missile to people that they don't like, their enemies, I mean, he'd probably think it was a good day.
Yeah.
So you don't know what this guy is going
right.
to do. And as far as economics, was what I was talking about before, because, you know, he's saying, I'm going to launch missiles to Austin, Texas. I mean, obviously the missiles won't reach us. However, the economic problems would. Americans there that are in the region would be killed, and you know, it's just, we don't want war to escalate there. And if that happens, then of course the economy, the Asian economy, and what we deal with, it'll affect the whole world, really.
David, I want to bring you back in. I mean, are we at the brink of at the start of a second nuclear age? And I want to get your insight in terms of what is the solution here. You hear a lot of talking heads saying diplomacy, dialogue, that's our best bet. What do you think we should do immediately?
Immediately, I commend the Obama administration. I think it's gotten it basically right, that it shored up U.S. deterrent power by the B-52 and the B-2 bomber flyovers and the F-22 fighter jets being flown over the Korean Peninsula. I don't think anyone can be mistaken as to the resolve of the United States to fulfill its security commitments vis-a-vis North Korea.
So they're doing it. So the U.S. is doing everything right?
Well, I think so. I think the administration has handled this basically correctly. It has shown firmness and resolve without being provocative.
Okay. All right. Thank you, David. Just one final thought from both members of our panel. Is the
I
U.S.
think we
doing
go
the right
provocative.
thing?
I think we say, hey, you know what? You launch a missile, you're going to get it back tenfold, and you're not going to mess with South Korea and our allies. And I think we have to be very strong about that. And also, we have to be strong with China. China's got to put the pressure on them with the economic sanctions. It's very, very important.
I think China has the leverage, and they should really be the focal point. What do you think, Dr.
I say
Rossi?
we show force, as much force as we are showing, and at the same time we have a dialogue and we try to pressure China to do what they can do.
Right.
And that's the right strategy. That's all we can do, but that's a lot. That's a lot of
Well,
pressure.
and he needs money, so money is key here. That can definitely change a lot of things.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks, you guys, for your insights. It'll be interesting to see what happens along that April 15th anniversary. I think that will say a lot. So we got to change gears. When we return to Fresh Outlook, we're tackling the surge of sci-fi. Why is there a surge of sci-fi? We'll find out when we return to Fresh Outlook. Stay with us.